Coming up today, President Park Geun-hye is set to leave for New York for talks with world leaders on sustainable development, climate change and other global challenges. Chinese President Xi Jinping is due in Washington. He'll have a working dinner with US President Barack Obama and other top US officials ahead of Friday's summit at the White House. Plus, more than 700 people have been killed in a stampede near Mecca in the worst disaster at the holy site in 25 years. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, September 25th here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome and you're tuned in to our early morning edition of Arirang News. Our top story this morning, South Korea has seen no signs that North Korea is about to make good on plans to launch a long-range rocket next month to mark a key anniversary. A senior government official says a launch in the coming days is unlikely, but Seoul is staying vigilant. Connie Kim reports.
There are no signs yet of an imminent rocket launch in North Korea, despite widespread speculation the regime is preparing to conduct a launch next month to mark a key anniversary. A senior South Korean government official said Thursday that there hasn't been any activity to suggest a launch at North Korea's Dongchangni missile launch site, nor has there been an increase in facility or personnel movement from last year. He said, however, a cover has been installed over the launch pad, which could be used to hide preparations, and the area around the launch site has been cleared. This comes after senior officials at North Korea's new satellite control center told CNN in an exclusive interview on Wednesday that a rocket launch is imminent. South Korean government and military officials say they're closely monitoring any unusual activity at the launch site. The officials say if North Korea were to conduct a launch to coincide with the 70th anniversary of its ruling Workers' Party on October 10th, they would expect the North to transfer the rocket to the launch site by the end of this month. Rocket assembly and fuel injection are estimated to take about a week. South Korean government authorities say if a rocket is launched, it will use an upgraded engine that's similar to the one used for its last satellite launch in late 2012. Experts predict the rocket could carry a payload into orbit that's 5 times heavier than the previously launched satellite. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye has warned North Korea that it will pay a high price if it makes a provocation that violates UN Security Council resolutions. President Park made the remarks during an interview with Bloomberg ahead of her trip to New York to attend the 70th session of the UN General Assembly. She also stressed that the South Korean government is devoting all of its diplomatic efforts to stop Pyongyang engaging in hostile acts. And as we just heard there, President Park Geun-hye embarks on a trip to the United States this Friday for talks with world leaders and to give a couple of speeches at the UN. She'll lay out her government's policies on a number of issues, including North Korea. For a look at what local experts think she'll cover, our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
During her trip to the U.S., President Park Geun-hye is expected to make at least 8 speeches that will include policies directed towards North Korea. The timing of her speeches is critical as there's growing speculations over further provocations from Pyongyang, including a possible rocket launch in October, marking the 70th anniversary of the founding of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party. The presidential office of Cheongwade said Thursday that it's too early to say for certain what she'll mention during her trip. But the consensus among local experts seems to be that the president will elaborate on her two-track policy concerning the North. 2 local experts also told Arirang News that they expect the president will strongly warn the regime from engaging in further provocations, while also stating that it's important the 2 Koreas work together in the humanitarian front.
I expect the president to call for inter-Korean cooperation concerning the resumption of reunions of families separated during the Korean War. She's expected to say that she doesn't want the reunions to come to a standstill or become a political controversy if North Korea launches a missile in October.
I expect the president to deliver a strong message towards North Korea so that it could refrain from further nuclear weapons development, as such actions will be a clear violation of UN resolutions. She is also expected to call for tougher sanctions if the North continues to engage in further provocations.
The two researchers added the president is to reiterate the importance of a reunified Korea, as she did in a keynote address to the UN General Assembly last year, and gained widespread support from the international community. Among President Park's remarks was that reunification would highly contribute in promoting peace and security in Northeast Asia. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Now, President Park Geun-hye's keynote speeches at the UN General Assembly will be broadcast live right here on Arirang TV. The South Korean leader will deliver two speeches at the UN, one for the UN Sustainable Development Summit this Saturday at 10 a.m. New York time or 11 p.m. Korea time. The other address to the UN General Assembly will begin next Monday at noon New York time or Tuesday 1 a.m. Korea time. Arirang TV will also broadcast several roundtable discussions on the UN meetings throughout President Park's trip to the US, which starts, as we mentioned, on this Friday and continues through Monday. Arirang TV joined the UN's in-house network in July. Now, in other news, US President Barack Obama will host his visiting Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, who is scheduled to arrive in Washington as we speak, at a private dinner to discuss details on various key issues ahead of their official summit on Friday. Sources in Washington say the White House arranged the informal dinner at Blair House for the two leaders to share views with an open mind and fine-tuned details of national interest, including the denuclearization of North Korea. The Wall Street Journal cited the US Deputy National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes as saying that Obama will propose that the two countries work in unison to defuse tensions with Pyongyang. And earlier in Seattle, Chinese President Xi Jinping attended a day-long internet forum hosted by Microsoft and the Chinese for top tech executives from China and the US. Lee Soo-eun reports.
On the second day of his visit to the U.S., President Xi Jinping participated in a roundtable discussion in Seattle with top executives from prominent U.S. and Chinese corporations. Similar to Tuesday's speech at the welcome banquet, the Chinese leader emphasized that strengthening the two nations' trade cooperation will not only bring benefits to both sides, but also promote world's prosperity. He then made it clear that China will be more open to foreign business and bound to reduce barriers to foreign investment and improve intellectual property protections. This was followed by a visit to the Microsoft headquarters, where President Xi spoke at the 8th Annual U.S.-China Internet Industry Forum, joined by Bill Gates of Microsoft and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. Alongside some of China's internet leaders, Xi echoed his message from the day before, saying China and the U.S. must work together to create a secure, more stable and prosperous cyberspace. He also added that China does not engage in commercial cyber theft and hacking, as cybercrime has been an issue straining Beijing-Washington ties from time to time. Chinese media assess Xi's visit to Seattle as a careful showcasing of China's national image and values. On this, the China Daily commented that progress in the bilateral relation is widely apparent. Following the forum, Xi visited a Boeing factory and a local high school in Seattle, and then finished the day's agenda with a closed-door reception with Chinese-American immigrants. He is scheduled to head to Washington, D.C. on Thursday to meet with U.S. President Barack Obama. Lee Soo-eun, Arirang News.
Now, Saudi Arabian authorities say at least 717 people have been killed and more than 800 injured in a stampede on Thursday during an annual pilgrimage to the holy city of Mecca. Around 2 million people were estimated to have taken part in the traditional journey when two large groups of pilgrims met at a crossroads several kilometers outside of the city, and a great many were crushed to death. The Saudi Crown Prince, who headed an emergency meeting after the stampede, has ordered a committee to be formed to investigate the disaster. Pope Francis, who is on his first visit to the United States, has delivered a speech to US Congress. The Pope began his historic speech by focusing on the poor and marginalized, urging the American people to offer a helping hand to those in need. He also challenged Congress on social and economic injustices, as well as the issue of immigration in the so-called land of dreams. The Pope stressed social structures should focus on restoring hope and promoting people's well-being through acts of compassion. With the speech, Pope Francis becomes the first pontiff ever to address a joint session of the US Senate and House of Representatives. The Pope will address the UN General Assembly in New York on Friday, local time. Now, the emissions scandal engulfing Volkswagen is just the tip of the iceberg, according to a report in the New York Times. The paper says the auto industry has long had a history of dodging regulations, even before the German automaker admitted it had cheated on US pollution tests. It said that for decades, car companies have found ways to manipulate mileage and emissions testing data, mentioning Ford as a previous example. The article goes on to say that while such practices have been banned by regulators, they have continued and become more sophisticated, as was seen with this case involving Volkswagen. In light of the scandal, Volkswagen CEO Martin Winterkorn resigned this week, but reports suggest he could still walk away with a cool $32 million pension pot. Staying with that story, Korea is going to retest certain Volkswagen models sold in the country to confirm emissions levels starting next week. The government says tests will begin next Thursday on 4 of 5 affected VW models: the Golf, Jetta, Beetle and the Audi A3. For a closer look at how emissions tests are done in Korea and how things may change in the future in light of this scandal, Park Geun-hye reports.
Diesel cars in Korea have been on the rise. According to industry data, there has been an 18% increase from last year, and over 50% of newly registered vehicles in 2015 have a diesel engine. But with the recent Volkswagen emissions rigging scandal, these numbers are likely to change. It is estimated that over 150,000 Volkswagen cars in Korea are affected by the software cheat, emitting up to almost 40 times more noxious gases than regulation allow. Korea follows European emission standard, and it is the Ministry of Environment that makes sure the cars meet them.
We follow the same standards as Europe. We've been following the Euro 6 standard since September last year, and starting this month, all automobiles need to meet it.
But to meet regulations, cars only need to pass tests that are performed in labs and not on the road. Volkswagen took advantage of this fact and used a software that could detect when a car was being tested to activate a system that gave positive results. And under the current testing system, it was not possible for regulators to spot Volkswagen's deception. But that is set to change in 2 years' time.
European regulators are getting ready to perform emissions tests on roads from September of 2017, and Korea will follow suit. We will continue to monitor before then, but it's difficult for us to set new industry standards and start road tests before Europe does.
For now, it seems that the burden rests on independent regulators to test and give a real measure of what and how much of it comes out of our cars. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's finance minister has moved to cool concerns about the risks posed by uncertainties in China. He says the world's second biggest economy faces a limited risk of a so-called hard landing this year. Lee Ji-won reports.
Korea's finance minister Choi Kyung-hwan said the country will stay alert on China's economic slowdown and will come up with measures accordingly. At an economic ministerial meeting on Thursday, the minister said Korea's economic growth showed a negative outlook following China's stock fluctuations. But he added China's economic uncertainty is only temporary.
Considering the recovery of the real estate market and the Chinese government's budget, it is very unlikely that China's economy will experience a hard landing.
Furthermore, he emphasized on the importance of analyzing changes in China's growth strategies and use them as an opportunity, since China is one of Korea's most important trade and investment partners. The minister said that measures will be implemented following the outcome of President Park's visit to China. During her visit, President Park established economic promises, including small and medium-sized enterprises settlement in China's local market. 이지원, 아리랑 뉴스.
Well, those are stories we've been following on this Friday morning here in Seoul. For more of the latest, don't forget to check out the website arirang.com/news. Goodbye.